Millionaire married a plain woman to please his family, but when she walked down the aisle, everyone gasped. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning sky over San Francisco was a dull sheet of gray, the kind that made everything look colder than it really was. Inside the glass-walled office of Grant Enterprises, Nathan Grant sat perfectly still at the end of a long mahogany table. His father's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "You will marry her, Nathan. The board is losing faith. A family alliance will fix that." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Marry her? Father, I have not even met her." You do not have to love her," the elder Grant replied, adjusting his cufflinks. "You just have to show the world that the Grant legacy still stands." A photograph slid across the table. A young woman with modest clothes, dark hair pulled back, no trace of glamour. Plain, polite, unthreatening. "Her name is Lila Tran," his father said. "Her father once saved our company from collapse. This marriage will repay that debt and silence our competitors." Nathan glanced at the picture, then set it down with a dry laugh. "Plain, obedient, convenient. Fine. If it keeps you and the board happy, I will do it." He rose from his chair, shoulders squared, face unreadable. But deep down, a small voice whispered that every deal came with a hidden cost. Across town, Lila Tran adjusted her reading glasses and stacked the last set of graded essays on her tiny wooden desk. Her classroom smelled faintly of chalk and lavender, the scent of the hand cream she used to hide the roughness from cleaning shifts. When the call came, she thought it was a mistake. A lawyer's voice informed her that the Grant family wished to meet. "You mean Nathan Grant, the millionaire?" she asked, half laughing. "Yes, Miss Tran. He is aware of your father's history with the company. Mr. Grant would like to speak with you about an arrangement." An arrangement. The word echoed in her mind as she looked out the cracked window toward the playground below. Children's laughter floated through the air, innocent, unknowing. She had been fighting for months to keep this small school open. The city was cutting funding, and without a miracle, it would close in 3 weeks. If this arrangement could save it, maybe pride was a luxury she could not afford. That evening, Lila walked into Brooks' Bistro, a place far too elegant for her second-hand coat. The air carried the soft hum of jazz and the scent of roasted coffee. At the corner table sat Nathan Grant, tall, composed, expensive in every detail. She hesitated before approaching. "Mr. Grant?" He looked up from his phone, eyes sharp but bored. "Miss Tran, please sit." Lila lowered herself into the seat, trying to steady her breath. "Your assistant said you had a proposal." Nathan folded his hands, voice even. "Let us not pretend this is romance. I need a wife for 12 months. You will attend public events, maintain appearances, and in return, your school will receive full funding for the next 10 years. Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. "You want to marry me? To fix your company's image?" He met her gaze without blinking. "Call it a partnership, a contract marriage." Silence filled the space between them, thick enough to touch. The pianist in the corner changed to a slow tune, as if time itself had paused to listen. Finally, Lila spoke. "And after a year?" "After a year," Nathan said, "we end it. Clean, simple. You walk away with your school, and I keep my empire intact." Lila studied him for a long moment. There was no warmth in his tone, no kindness in his eyes, just the cold certainty of a man who had everything except love. She took a deep breath and nodded once. "Fine. But remember, Mr. Grant, no contract can teach respect. You will have to earn that yourself." For the first time that night, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not amusement, something he could not name yet. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the glass, a quiet witness to the deal that would soon change both of their lives forever. The rain did not stop that night. It came down steady and cold, streaking the windows of Nathan's penthouse like thin silver threads. He stood before the city skyline, the contract still on his desk. The ink was dry, the deal sealed, yet something about the quiet pressed against his chest harder than usual. He had made hundreds of deals before, but this one felt heavier. A marriage signed on paper, emotionless, transactional. It should have been simple. Still, her voice kept echoing in his mind. No contract can teach respect. Nathan ran a hand through his hair and exhaled. Respect, he murmured almost to himself. We will see about that. The next morning, Lila arrived at the Grant residence. The mansion looked like a museum, all glass and marble, towering over the bay. The gates opened with a soft hum, and a driver in uniform led her through a hallway lined with oil portraits of the Grant family. Every face in those frames seemed to stare down at her, measuring her worth. Inside the grand living room, Nathan waited, dressed in a tailored gray suit. He glanced up from a tablet as she entered. "Miss Tran," he said, his tone clipped. "We will begin your orientation." Lila hesitated. "Orientation?" He gestured toward a woman standing nearby. "This is Evelyn, my assistant. She will make sure you are prepared for every public appearance. My family and the press can be demanding." Evelyn smiled politely. "You will need wardrobe fittings, etiquette training, and a brief understanding of our corporate events. We have only 1 week before the engagement party." 1 week?" Lila asked, startled. "That soon?" Nathan's expression did not change. "A contract works on schedule. This one is no different." By the second day, Lila was seated in front of a wall of mirrors. Seamstresses pinned fabric, adjusted hems, and circled her like artists around a statue. She tried not to move. She had never worn anything that expensive before, and it showed in the stiffness of her shoulders. Nathan stepped into the room mid-fitting, holding a phone to his ear. His conversation ended abruptly when his eyes caught her reflection in the mirror. For a moment, he forgot to speak. The plain woman from the photo now stood wrapped in pale satin, hair swept back, nervous but graceful. She noticed his gaze in the mirror. "Does this meet your company's image standards?" she asked quietly. He blinked, composing himself. "It will do." Her mouth curved slightly. "Good to know." Evelyn, standing nearby, caught the subtle exchange and smiled behind her clipboard. "I think this will be interesting," she whispered to one of the stylists. That evening, Lila wandered through the garden behind the mansion. The air was cool, scented with rain-soaked roses. She sat on a stone bench and looked out toward the bay lights flickering across the water. The silence was peaceful until she heard footsteps behind her. Nathan's voice broke the stillness. "You do not seem impressed by luxury." She turned to face him. "I am grateful, Mr. Grant, but marble floors and crystal chandeliers do not make a home." He studied her quietly. "You really mean that, do you not?" "Yes," she said. "Home is where you are not afraid to be honest." Nathan looked away, unsure what to do with words like that. "Most people in my world do not believe in honesty." "Then maybe that is why your world feels so lonely," she replied softly. He said nothing. The wind carried the faint sound of waves against the shore. The following days moved fast. Reporters hovered outside the gate. Headlines speculated about the sudden engagement. "Reclusive millionaire to marry unknown teacher," one headline read. Nathan brushed it off. Lila pretended not to see it, but in private, she practiced every smile, every polite nod, determined not to embarrass him. When she faltered during a lesson on dining etiquette, dropping a fork onto the marble floor, she bent quickly to pick it up. Nathan's voice stopped her. "Leave it. Someone will handle it." She straightened, cheeks flushed. "In my world, Mr. Grant, we handle it ourselves." He paused, almost amused. "You are not in your world anymore." She met his eyes, steady and calm. "Maybe not, but I am still myself." Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing to say. For the first time, he realized she was not someone he could simply instruct or control. That night, he stood again by the window, watching her reflection move across the polished floor as she passed the hall below. He remembered how confident he had sounded when he called this a simple contract. But nothing about Lila Tran was simple. Outside, thunder rolled low over the bay, and for the first time in years, Nathan Grant wondered if a deal he had made might actually change him. The engagement party arrived sooner than either of them expected. The Grant mansion shimmered that evening beneath a canopy of golden lights. Guests from every corner of San Francisco's high society filled the ballroom, their laughter echoing off crystal chandeliers. Cameras flashed, journalists whispered, and a small orchestra played gentle jazz to keep the tension hidden beneath elegance. Lila stood near the grand staircase. Every nerve in her body stretched tight. Her silver gown flowed around her like liquid moonlight, a creation Evelyn had personally selected. She looked composed, but her palms were cold. Across the room, Nathan was surrounded by investors, his voice calm, his smile practiced. When he finally crossed the floor toward her, the chatter in the room softened. He offered his arm with a polite smile. "Are you ready, Miss Tran?" She gave a small nod. "As ready as someone pretending to belong here can be." His brow lifted slightly. "You will be fine. Just remember, perception is everything." "And honesty?" she asked softly. He looked away, guiding her toward the center of the room. Tonight, honesty would only confuse them. The master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nathan Grant and his fiancée, Miss Lila Tran." The applause sounded polite, almost cautious. Lila could feel eyes dissecting her dress, her hair, her posture. One woman near the front whispered to another, "She must be after his money." Lila caught the words but kept her smile steady. She leaned closer to Nathan and said quietly, "Do they always speak so loudly when they whisper?" He glanced at her, surprised by her calm tone. "You heard that?" "Yes," she replied. "And no, it does not matter. I am here for the school, not for them." Something flickered in his expression again, something like admiration, but he said nothing. As the speeches began, Lila stood beside him, nodding politely. The board members spoke of legacy, business, and reputation, each word as polished as the marble floors beneath them. Then the microphone passed to her. Nathan leaned closer. "You do not have to speak." Lila looked up at him. "I think I should." She stepped forward, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Thank you all for welcoming me tonight. I know I am not what many expected, but I believe partnerships, whether in business or in life, are not about image. They are about integrity." The room fell silent. Even the musicians paused for a beat before resuming softly. Lila smiled once more and stepped back. Nathan stared at her, stunned. In that single minute, she had done what he never managed in years of board meetings. She had made them listen. After the event, as guests drifted out into the night, Lila slipped away to the balcony for air. The city glowed below, and the cool wind brushed her hair across her cheek. She was lost in thought when Nathan joined her. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said quietly. "Better than most people born into this world." "Thank you," she replied. "I was not trying to impress them." "I know," he said. "That is what impressed them." They stood side by side, the tension between them softening for the first time. From inside, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses faded to a distant hum. Lila looked at him, her tone gentler. "You keep everyone at a distance, Mr. Grant. Does that make you feel safe?" He hesitated. "Safe is not always the same as happy." "Maybe not," she said, "but it is lonely." He turned to look at her, and for a moment the guarded mask slipped. There was something human there, something he had buried long ago. The following week brought another wave of press. Nathan's image had improved overnight, and the company's stock rose with every photo of him and his new fiancée. Yet what should have been relief only left him restless. He began to notice the small things, how she always greeted the staff by name, how she spent quiet mornings reading by the window, how she smiled at the gardeners as if they were equals. The house, once silent and cold, now carried traces of life. One evening, as she organized boxes of donated books for her students, Nathan stopped at the doorway. "You are still working?" he asked. She looked up, startled. "Yes. The school library needs replacements. Many of the old books are falling apart." "You could just buy new ones," he said. She shook her head. "These were gifts from the community. They have stories. I would rather fix them than throw them away." Nathan leaned against the doorframe, watching her carefully rebind the edges of a worn cover. Her hands moved with patience and care. For a man used to signing papers and making millions in minutes, the sight of someone mending instead of replacing felt strangely unfamiliar and moving. Later that night, as rain began to fall again, Nathan found himself replaying her words in his head. "I would rather fix than throw away." He looked around his apartment at the expensive art, the silent phone, the walls that echoed when he spoke. For the first time, the luxury felt hollow. Through the window, he saw her silhouette crossing the hallway toward her room, the soft light following her like a halo. And without realizing it, Nathan Grant, who once believed love was just another transaction, began to wonder what it would mean to truly earn someone's respect. The days after the engagement party moved quietly. The tabloids called them the city's most unexpected couple, and reporters waited outside the gates for a glimpse of them. Nathan stayed buried in work, but something in his routine had begun to change. He found himself leaving his office earlier, drawn to the soft sound of Lila's voice echoing from the study. She was teaching her students online again, using his company's conference system. He paused at the doorway one evening. The room glowed with warm lamplight. Lila sat surrounded by art projects and paper cranes made by the children. "Remember," she said gently through the screen, "you are not defined by what you have, but by what you give." When the class ended, she noticed him standing there. "I did not mean to interrupt," Nathan said. "You could use any system you want. I will have the IT team improve your connection." She smiled faintly. "I appreciate that, but these children do not need the best technology. They just need someone who believes in them." Nathan watched her gather the papers. "You always talk about belief," he said. "Does it actually change anything?" "Yes," she replied. "Belief changes people before it changes the world." For a long moment he said nothing. He only nodded, as if storing her words somewhere he could not name. Later that week, a storm rolled across the bay. The power flickered twice, and the mansion grew quiet except for the wind. Lila found Nathan in the library, standing near the fireplace with a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "You are not working tonight?" she asked. He shook his head. "There is nothing left to sign. For once, that feels strange." She moved closer to the fire, the light painting her face in gold. "Maybe that is not a bad thing." He looked at her, really looked this time. "I do not know how you do it, walk through this house, through this life, and still look unafraid." "I am afraid," she said softly, "but I refuse to live that way." Nathan's throat tightened. No boardroom, no contract, no victory had ever left him feeling this unsteady. He wanted to say something, but before he could, lightning flashed, and the lights went out. In the sudden darkness, he heard her breath catch. "It is all right," he said quietly. "Stay where you are." He found her hand in the dark. It was small, warm, real. They stood in silence as the thunder rolled, the only light coming from the fire. For the first time since their arrangement began, Nathan did not think about the deal or the press or the expectations. He simply felt her presence steady, calm, and completely unpretending. When the lights came back on, he did not let go right away. Lila looked up, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled gently. "See?" she whispered. "Even storms end." Nathan did not answer, but his heart did. For the first time in years, it was not made of marble. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the marble floor, bright and calm after the storm. Lila was already in the garden, trimming the wilted roses the wind had broken during the night. Nathan watched her from the balcony above, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hand. She moved slowly, collecting each fallen petal, as if it still mattered. He wondered why she cared so much about small things that others would simply throw away. When she looked up, she noticed him watching. "Good morning, Mr. Grant," she called. He smiled faintly. "You are up early." "So are you," she replied. "I suppose neither of us slept much." He set the cup down and joined her outside. The air smelled clean, fresh from rain. "You could hire someone to do this," he said. "I know," she answered, wiping her hands on her apron. "But when you do things yourself, you learn to see what others miss." Nathan studied her face, the sunlight brushing her hair. "What do you see then?" She pointed at the smallest bush near the fence. "That one. Everyone thought it died last winter, but look closer, new leaves." He did, and there they were, tiny green shoots against the gray wood. "It survived because someone kept watering it," she said quietly. Nathan looked at her, realizing she was not just talking about the plant. That afternoon, they attended a board meeting together at the Grant Tower. The event had been planned for weeks, but Nathan knew the board members were curious to meet his fiancée again. As they entered the sleek glass conference room, every head turned. "Miss Tran," one director said, forcing a smile, "we are pleased to see you again. You handled the gala very gracefully." Lila nodded politely. "Thank you. I am just here to support Nathan." But when a presentation began, one of the senior members made a pointed remark. "Our shareholders appreciate Mrs. Grant's contribution to public image. Let us hope it remains as photogenic as it is temporary." The room went silent. Nathan's jaw tightened, ready to respond, but Lila spoke first. "Do not worry," she said calmly. "I know beauty fades, That is why I prefer to build something that lasts. A few people shifted in their seats, uncertain how to react. Nathan glanced at her, unable to hide the small smile forming on his lips. After the meeting, as they walked through the marble lobby, he said, "You were extraordinary." "I only told the truth," she replied. "Maybe that is why it felt extraordinary," he said quietly. That evening, Nathan stopped by the small classroom she had set up for her students inside the mansion. Drawings and letters covered the walls, bright colors against the white space. In the center of the room was a single chair with a note that read, "Reserved for anyone who needs a place to start over." He stood there for a long moment, something unspoken rising in his chest. Then he whispered to himself, "Maybe I do." And for the first time, Nathan Grant began to understand that the woman he had married for convenience was quietly teaching him how to live again. A few weeks later, the city prepared for the Spring Charity Gala, an annual event hosted by the Grant Foundation. It would be Lila's first official appearance as Nathan's fiancée since the engagement party. The mansion buzzed with stylists, assistants, and reporters waiting outside the gate. Inside, Lila stood before the mirror in her dressing room, smoothing the pale blue gown Evelyn had chosen for her. Nathan appeared at the doorway. "You look different," he said. She glanced at him through the mirror. "Different good or different strange?" He hesitated. "Different real." Her smile was soft. "I am still me, Nathan." "I know," he replied. "That is what worries me. The people you will face tonight are not always kind." "I faced worse," she said gently, "and I survived." He wanted to say more, but stopped himself. For the first time, his concern did not come from reputation, it came from care. The ballroom that evening glittered under hundreds of hanging lights. Photographers called their names as they stepped from the car. Nathan's hand brushed against hers. It was not for show this time. Inside, the crowd turned to look, whispers rippling through the air. Lila moved with quiet confidence, greeting people with grace. When one reporter asked what she planned to do as Nathan's future wife, she smiled and said, "Continue teaching. Wealth means nothing if it cannot help someone else." Erides. Her words spread quickly through the room. Some smiled in approval, others frowned. A group of investors muttered near the bar, unimpressed by her humility. Nathan overheard them. "Pretty face, but she will never fit his world," one man said. Nathan's patience snapped. He turned sharply. "You are right," he said. "She does not fit this world. She makes it better." The man fell silent, startled. Lila heard it too. Her eyes met Nathan's across the crowd, and something passed between them unspoken, deep and real. Later that night, they slipped onto the rooftop balcony to breathe. The city stretched below like a sea of lights. Nathan removed his tie and leaned against the railing. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "I only said what I believe," she replied. "Why is that so surprising?" "Because belief is rare in this world," he answered. "Most people talk about love or kindness like they are strategies, not truths." Lila looked at him carefully. "And what about you, Nathan? Do you still see this as a contract?" He turned to face her fully. The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment he saw her not as a duty, not as a transaction, but as something sacred. "No," he said slowly. "I think it became something else." She held his gaze. "Then maybe the contract did its job. It taught us both what we were missing." Nathan stepped closer, his voice low. "It taught me what I never knew I needed." For a long time, they said nothing. The night was quiet except for the hum of the city and the soft rhythm of their breathing. For the first time, Nathan Grant was not acting, not pretending. He was simply a man standing beside the woman who had turned his world into something worth believing in. The morning after the gala began like any other, but by noon the peace shattered. A news alert flashed across every business channel. Grant engagement scandal, sources claim, contract marriage. Screens filled with photos of Nathan and Lila, taken from private angles, accompanied by leaked documents showing signatures and clauses that looked painfully familiar. Nathan froze at his desk, the phone ringing non-stop. Evelyn burst into the office, pale. "Someone leaked the agreement. The board is furious. Reporters are outside, demanding a statement." He stood slowly, anger burning under his calm voice. "Who did this?" "We do not know yet," she said. "But the documents came from your legal department." Before he could respond, another call came in his father. The voice on the line was sharp. "End it, Nathan. The family cannot survive this humiliation. Send her away before the board votes you out." Nathan gripped the phone. I will not. You made a deal and now you will pay for it, his father snapped. The line went dead. By the time he reached home, the front gate was surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions, but the only sound that mattered came from inside. Lila stood in the hallway, her expression pale but steady. I saw the news, she said quietly. I am handling it, Nathan replied. It was a setup. Someone wants to destroy both of us. She shook her head. It does not matter who did it. The world already believes I married you for money. You know that is not true, he said. Yes, she answered. But truth does not always matter to people who need someone to blame. Nathan stepped closer, his voice low. Do not leave. We will face it together. Lila looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. I made this agreement to save my school, not to ruin your life. Maybe it is time I keep my part of the promise and walk away. He caught her hand. Lila, please. But she pulled away gently. You taught me that courage means doing what is right, not what is easy. Let me prove that. She turned toward the door, leaving Nathan standing in the silence that followed, the same silence that had once filled his mansion before she came into his life. Only this time, it felt unbearable. Days passed, but the silence inside the Grant mansion grew heavier than ever. Reporters no longer waited outside the gate. The headlines had already moved on to fresher scandals, yet Nathan could not. Every corner of the house reminded him of her voice, her laughter, and the way she had brought warmth into rooms that once felt lifeless. He went back to work, but nothing felt the same. Meetings blurred together, contracts piled up, and his father's calls went unanswered. When Evelyn entered his office with a worried look, he barely looked up. She returned the engagement ring, Evelyn said quietly, placing a small velvet box on his desk. Inside lay the ring he had once chosen without emotion, now carrying every ounce of regret he had never spoken aloud. Nathan closed the box slowly. Do you know where she went? She is at the school, Evelyn replied. She refused the foundation's funding. She said the children deserve to stand on their own. He rose from his chair, resolve sharpening in his chest. Then so do I. The following afternoon, Nathan arrived at the school without warning. The building was small, the paint on the walls faded, but laughter spilled from every classroom. Through an open window, he saw Lila reading aloud to her students. She looked peaceful, radiant, even in simplicity. When she stepped outside and saw him, surprise flickered across her face. Nathan, what are you doing here? He took a breath. I came to fix what I broke. There is nothing left to fix, she said softly. The contract is over. He nodded. You are right. That is why I tore it apart. He handed her a single folded sheet of paper, the shredded remains of their agreement taped together, with one line written in bold ink. No more conditions. Only truth. Lila's eyes filled with tears. Why now? Because I finally understood, Nathan said. You were never the one who needed to prove your worth. I was. The students peeked through the window, whispering, their teacher and the millionaire standing in the sunlight like two parts of a story finally coming together. Nathan looked at her, voice steady. If you will have me, I would like to start again. No titles, no contracts, just us. For a long moment, Lila said nothing. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that could rebuild an entire world. Then start by helping me paint this wall, she said softly. Nathan laughed for the first time in weeks. Yes, ma'am. And just like that, the man who once measured life in profit picked up a brush, dipped it in color, and began to paint beside the woman who had taught him what love really meant. A year later, the Grant Foundation held its annual charity event again, but this time it looked different. Gone were the diamond chandeliers and towering floral walls. Instead, the ballroom had been transformed into an art gallery filled with paintings made by children from Lila's school. Each canvas told a story of hope, of second chances, of what could grow when someone believed. Nathan stood near the entrance, greeting guests who were genuinely smiling this year. The tabloids now called him the reformed millionaire, a title he found amusing but irrelevant. All that mattered was the woman standing beside him, laughing softly as she guided a group of students through the room. When the music dimmed, Nathan stepped forward to speak. Last year, I stood here pretending to understand what success meant, he began. I thought it was about wealth, reputation, control. But then someone showed me that real success is measured by the lives we touch and the love we choose to protect. He turned toward Lila, his voice steady but full of feeling. Lila Tran, You turned my world into something worth living for. Tonight, there is no contract, no conditions, only truth." He reached into his pocket and revealed a simple silver ring, not the diamond one she had returned. "This one is not for a business arrangement. It is for a life we will build together, as equals." The crowd fell silent as he knelt before her. Lila's eyes shimmered with tears. "Nathan, you already gave me what I needed," she whispered. "Respect, kindness, home. Then let me give it forever," he said. She nodded, unable to speak, and the room filled with applause. The children cheered, the music swelled, and for the first time in his life, Nathan Grant felt completely free. Later that night, they stood on the rooftop of the renovated school. The city lights sparkled below, and a soft wind carried laughter from the classrooms behind them. Nathan looked at Lila and said quietly, "Turns out, love does not need a contract, just courage." "Evan." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And maybe a little faith." He held her closer, the skyline glowing around them, as the story of the man who once married for convenience finally became one of love, redemption, and a promise kept forever.